Imagine a place just completely cut off from the rest of the planet for literally tens of thousands of years. We're talking about an island where the locals have fiercely and sometimes fatally defended their shores from anyone who even tries to get close. Today, we're diving right into this explainer to unpack a story of survival, extreme isolation, and tragedy as we explore the deep mystery of North Sentinel Island. Let's jump right into it by looking at these chilling final diary entries. Lord, is this island Satan's last stronghold? I don't want to die. These were written in November 2018 by John Allen Chau, a 26-year-old American missionary. He was incredibly driven by an obsession to introduce Christianity to the islanders, but he suddenly found himself face to face with a reality that absolutely terrified him. You can actually feel the sheer dread in his words as he realizes he stepped into a world completely unknown to modern humanity and the intense fear that he might not make it out alive.
So here's how his fatal and strictly illegal mission played out. Under the cover of darkness, Chau completely bypassed the Coast Guard. He actually bribed a local fisherman 25,000 rupees to just drop him near the island. The next morning, he paddled up in a kayak offering dried fish and a football, calling out greetings like "Jesus loves you." But a young boy on the beach immediately fired an arrow that literally pierced the Bible Chau was holding. Now, despite this crystal clear warning and his own diary entry showing how terrified he was, he made a fatal decision. He ignored the warnings and went back the very next day. He didn't make it back. Local fishermen actually watched from afar as the tribe buried his body right there on the beach.
Moving into Section 1, the last Stone Age tribe. Who exactly are the North Sentinelese? 60 square kilometers. That is their entire universe. North Sentinel Island is basically a tiny patch of incredibly dense, impenetrable forest out in the Andaman and Nicobar archipelago. And what's wild about this is how close they are to civilization. It's just about 50 kilometers away from the region's capital, Port Blair. Yet inside that tiny 60 square kilometer bubble, time has pretty much stood completely still. To put this into perspective, let's look at their timeline. According to the Out of Africa theory, modern humans started spreading across the globe around 70,000 years ago. Well, it's believed that the direct ancestors of the Sentinelese arrived on this exact island somewhere between 10,000 and 30,000 years ago. Now think about this. Roughly 12,000 years ago, the rest of the world discovered agriculture. But because they were so incredibly isolated on this rock, they completely missed the agricultural revolution. No farming at all. They are essentially living exactly as humanity did back during the Stone Age.
Based on the few very distant observations we have, their hunter-gatherer lifestyle is just fascinating. They hunt wild boars, harvest turtle eggs, catch fish, and gather honey. For housing, they build these large communal huts where multiple families live, alongside smaller single-family ones. They even navigate the shallow waters using these incredibly narrow wooden canoes that are actually under 2 feet wide. But honestly, the most mind-blowing detail here is their language. John Chau noted it was full of high-pitched sounds like ba, pa, la, and sa. It's so unique and isolated that even their indigenous neighbors from other Andaman tribes cannot understand a single syllable they say.
So how many of them are there? Well, the Indian government's official estimate is anywhere from 50 to 500. That is a massive, highly vague gap, which really just brilliantly illustrates how little we actually know about them. John Chau guessed there were maybe 250 people based on his brief encounters, but the truth is nobody has ever been able to do a proper census. They live totally hidden beneath this dense forest canopy, completely self-sustaining, making their exact numbers a total mystery.
That brings us to Section 2. A history of hostility, centuries of clashes with the outside world.
So why are they so hostile to outsiders? Well, history gives us a pretty dark clue. Back in 1880, a British officer named Maurice Vidal Portman decided he was going to try and civilize the tribe. His method? He landed on the island, kidnapped an elderly couple and 4 children, and dragged them back to Port Blair. Now, having been isolated for millennia, the tribe had absolutely zero immunity to outside pathogens. The elderly couple perished almost immediately. Portman, probably realizing he'd made a terrible mistake, sent the kids back to the island with some gifts, but the damage was almost certainly done. It is highly probable those kids unknowingly introduced devastating foreign diseases right back to their people. That invisible, deadly attack? It perfectly explains their deep-seated aggression toward any outsiders today.
And throughout the 20th century, that aggression was a constant theme. In 1967, an Indian anthropologist named Triloknath Pandit left gifts on the beach, coconuts, iron tools, but didn't see anyone. Then in 1974, a film crew showed up to make a documentary. The tribe's response? A barrage of arrows. They actually shot the film's director right in the thigh. The crew had even tried offering a live pig as a peace offering, but the tribe wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. They violently rejected it, killed the pig, and buried it in the sand. Then came a major turning point in 1981 with a cargo ship called the Primrose, which eventually led to an incredibly rare moment in 1991.
Let's talk about the Primrose. In 1981, this massive cargo ship got caught in a severe storm and ran aground right on the island's reef. The sailors were actually trapped there for a week, watching the Sentinelese gather on the beach to attack them before they were finally rescued by helicopter. But here's what's so interesting. This maritime accident inadvertently changed the tribe forever. It gave these Stone Age people their very first access to iron. They managed to scavenge the metal from the shipwreck and craft iron arrowheads, seriously upgrading their weaponry. And hey, you can literally still see the rusted wreck of the Primrose on satellite maps today.
Which leads us to Section 3, the 1991 contact anomaly. A brief moment of peace.
In January of 1991, something completely unprecedented happened. An unarmed expedition led by Indian anthropologist Madhumala Chattopadhyay waded into the water and offered the tribe coconuts. And surprisingly, the tribe didn't attack. In fact, during a really tense moment on a later trip, a Sentinelese man aimed his arrow right at the team. But a Sentinelese woman actually stepped forward and pushed his weapon down. The guy listened, buried his weapon, and the tribe waded out into the water to accept coconuts directly from the team's hands. It broke over a century of violent rejection.
But unfortunately, that peace was a short-lived anomaly. By the late 90s, the hostility had fully returned, and honestly, we still don't completely know why. After renewed aggression, including the really tragic deaths of 2 lost fishermen who accidentally drifted too close in 2006, the Indian government realized that trying to force contact was both futile and incredibly dangerous. So they established a strict eyes-on, hands-off policy. They threw a 5-kilometer buffer zone around the whole island. The new rule was simple. Monitor them from afar to make sure they're okay, like checking on them by helicopter after the 2004 tsunami, but absolutely do not interfere with their isolation.
This brings us into the climax of our explainer, Section 4, the cost of connection, the profound ethical dilemma of forced integration.
To really grasp why total isolation might just be their absolute best defense, we only have to look at their neighbors. Back in the 1800s, when the British first arrived to colonize these islands, the Great Andamanese tribe had about 5,000 members. Today, there are only 41 remaining. It is a staggering, heartbreaking population decline, and it was caused directly by their connection to the outside world.
And we're not just talking about ancient history here. We have a much more recent precedent with the Jaroa tribe, another group in the Andaman Islands. In the 1970s, the government successfully made friendly contact with them, but the fallout was just disastrous. When they were introduced to packaged food, it caused severe digestion issues and widespread obesity, simply because their bodies weren't adapted to it. Exposure to modern vices like tobacco and alcohol led to rapid, devastating addiction. Ultimately, the very fabric of their traditional language and culture just began to vanish. It's a highly sobering look at the dangerous, real-world consequences of forcing modern society onto historically isolated peoples.
So all of this leaves us with a massively complex ethical debate today. On one side, proponents of modernization argue that keeping the tribe isolated deprives them of basic human progress. They point out that introducing modern medical advancements and technology could massively improve and save lives. But on the flip side, advocates for cultural preservation argue that making contact is practically a death sentence. They argue we have a strict duty to protect them from foreign diseases they have absolutely zero immunity against, allowing them to just keep living sustainably with nature exactly as they have for thousands of years. It's absolutely vital to see the heavy, valid arguments resting on both ends of the spectrum.
Which leaves us staring at one final, profound question. Should we leave them alone? Is total, unwavering isolation the ultimate form of protection for the North Sentinelese, or is it a denial of human advancement? It's a debate that really challenges our fundamental understanding of progress, preservation, and what it means to respect a totally different way of life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.